Hello, beautiful stars. Thanks so much for tuning in. I am Astar, and welcome to Source Light Star. Welcome to today's Wizard's Cabinet. No, seriously, today I feel like a school's teacher because we are going to be teaching some spiritual lessons. So today I'm trying to be a bit funny. Let me know if it works. No, really, because we're talking about quite a deep theme. So I wanted to keep things as lighthearted as possible. So let's try to look into the theme with as much humor as possible. Again, we are looking into how to heal core wounds. And to explain the topic of how to heal core wounds, I have received a very strong message from Spirit and a very strong vision actually, which you can see here on this very beautiful board. And since it came through so strongly, I really felt a call from Spirit to share this with the collective. So a few weeks ago, I was meditating and I had this really strong vision, and I was like, oh my God, it makes so much sense. And I tried to visualize it to the best of my ability with the tools that I had at my disposal. But this is what came out. And basically what you're seeing here is I'm trying to visualize what it means to have a core wound in the heart. So this bump here represents a trauma. So a really deeply impacting situation which has left almost like a bump in our heart, or something that was so impactful, so triggering, or so painful, or so big that it really it's almost like the impact of a comet. So if a comet comes with a really strong force, even though it's something very little, there is something about like the crater is then much bigger than we might think. And this representation here, this image, is actually an image of the energetic body. So coming back to this bump here, whenever we are in a traumatic situation, or whenever we experience trauma or something which is really deeply impacting our heart, then again this almost creates this bump in our energetic field. And what this bump does is basically it's not allowing the life force energy to flow smoothly. So basically, life force energy, we have to think of it almost like a river. And these little drops here, they are supposed to flow in this direction like a river of little flames. And it's so funny that this came through. Like, I never saw a vision like that, and I was like, wow, that's interesting. So Spirit showed me life force energy like a river full of these little flames. So it was the energy of fire but water at the same time, because life force energy is fire and water. It's the masculine and the feminine. It's the electricity and the magnetism, which together is electromagnetism. Electromagnetism is electricity or energy, life force energy, that which keeps us alive and everything in the universe alive. And basically creation unfolds like a spiral. And everything that unfolds in creation is like a spiral of this river of little flames that is flowing. And then everything that happens is following its course. And this is then what animates our being. Like, this is the life force energy if it flows. But then again, if there is a trauma that is creating this bump in our heart or this bump in our energetic field, then again the life force energy is not flowing as it's supposed to. Like, it's not flowing smoothly because it has to go down here and then up again in order to flow like this. But then another message is also there are different layers. So the closest one is the densest, and the highest one is the less dense. So the highest, they don't really care what's going on in the physical, they just flow. But then as closer as we get to the physical, it's starting to get denser and denser and denser. And so when we go then into the energetic body or the physical, this is then where the stagnancy or this piled up energy is then residing. And then again, this bump is basically creating this pent up energy. Because again, instead of flowing like a river smoothly, these little droplets of like flowing fire water, they have to go down into this wound almost, and then have to make their way up again. But then depending on how deep the wound is, Spirit really showed me that these pockets, they can create almost a life of their own. Because again, if everything follows the natural flow, if the spiral is spiraling as it's meant to, if the river is flowing as it's supposed to, then that's the flow of nature. That's like how we are supposed to grow and expand. But then again, when there is this bump, then this is creating almost like a reverse effect. Like this is the swastika here, so it's spiraling backwards. And Spirit really showed me that this spiraling backwards, this is like whenever we feel like restriction, or whenever we feel repressed, something is repressed, or also when we feel resistance, for example. So this life force energy being repulsed or almost flowing back instead of forward, that's the feeling of resistance that we have if you want to do something, for example. So let's say in a past lifetime I was persecuted or imprisoned for being a wizard or for being a magical person, then the lifetime in prison is what creates this very, very, very deep wound in the heart. And then maybe, let's say, I died in prison and was never able to fully heal this wound. And then I am reincarnated in the next lifetime, but then I still have this bump in my heart, because what I need to heal is all these years of being imprisoned and all this persecution. And so the reason why in this lifetime I might be afraid of speaking up is because in a past lifetime I was imprisoned for speaking up. So whenever we feel a resistance towards something, this is actually the universe's sign to show us what we need to heal. Or for example, when I have a resistance of speaking up, it means that the wound that I'm healing has to do with fully being comfortable to speak up. Or for example, if I have been going through a lot of, injustice. So when in this lifetime, if we encounter injustice, then we might feel this same emotion, like this, not a blockage, but triggers coming up. Because again, whenever there is a trigger that resonates with the wound, this is the only way how then it can actually be healed. Because now we have looked how life force can get stuck, how we can have this repressed energy, but now we're wanting to know, obviously, how can we heal this? How can we let go of this? How can we smoothen out this bump here and allow the life force to flow easily? Basically, coming back to this energy of repressing or like holding back or like being fearful. So whenever we encounter this energy, especially at the beginning when I was starting my YouTube channel, for the first, if it was a long time, for the first few months, I really was afraid of speaking in front of the camera. Like literally every time I was in front of the camera, I felt this, this feeling of, I don't want, or like, I don't want to show myself. This is this repressed energy. This like almost wanting to move forward, but then something holding you back. And this thing holding you back is actually like a defense mechanism of our soul that tells us, wait a minute, like in a past lifetime I was imprisoned for speaking up. So in this lifetime it's not safe to speak up. And that's why we have this fear, like, whoa, where is this fear even coming from? And very often I had this thing, like, where is it coming from? Like, why am I afraid to speak up? Why am I afraid to talk in front of the camera? Like, usually I'm super confident and I don't have a problem to speak in front of people. But in that very moment, I felt this immense amount of fear and a lot of repression, or a lot of, not repression, the word is resistance. There you go. Whenever we feel resistance towards something, this is actually, it's a blessing, is a key. it's to show us where we need to heal or transform. So anything right now, try to tune in your unique situation. Try to think of something where you feel resistance. Resistance towards opening up. Resistance towards showing your vulnerable side. Resistance towards starting a diet, or whatever you feel that there is resistance. Really, really tuning in with your heart and allowing it to show you why it's there. Because then again, the reason why we then are incarnated with, let's say, the same wound, or the reason why we are placed in an environment that triggers similar triggers like our past lifetime, is so that in this lifetime it can then come up to the surface. So in order to heal, let's say, the wound of, for example, being afraid to speak up, we have to deal to some extent in this lifetime with the fear of speaking up. But since we are here to heal it, we are also here to then overcome it. And literally the only way how we can overcome it is by full on facing our fears and doing exactly the thing that we are resisting. Because literally that's the only way how we can level out the bump and allow the life force energy to flow again. Because whenever we resist, there will always be this repulsion of energy. Whenever there is resistance, then the life force energy will always go back. And these pockets of energy, they create stagnancy, like blockages. If you think that you have money blockages, like you do everything possible, but money never manifests. Or if it's about friendship or love, you try to manifest people, but they don't show up. Or you try to manifest the house or the career, and it doesn't show up. Like, the reason why that is because this energy first needs to be liberated. And it's so important to understand where it actually comes from, where this resistance comes from. And most of the times, it is past lives or ancestral karma, or it's deeper in the subconscious. All of this is happening in the deep subconscious, the energetic body. And that's why I personally believe, and that's only my opinion, you can have a different opinion, I believe there is only spiritual healing. Like literally there is no other healing than spiritual healing. Because spiritual healing is the only true healing. Because what we do with spiritual healing is healing the core, healing the wound. For example, if we have depression, and I have so many friends who have gone through this experience of having depression, and then the first thing they get is prescription of antidepressants. But what these antidepressants do, they're actually just suppressing the symptoms of what, like I'm feeling sad, or like feeling out of place, or like they're basically making your emotions numb so that you don't really feel the pain. But exactly the pain, that's where the healing lies. Feeling the pain and really understanding where it's coming from, that's the only way how we can heal. But then if we like numb ourselves with all these antidepressants, then we might, in the long run, never be able to then connect with our deepest emotions, with past lifetimes, and like they can only come through if we go a layer deeper. And then of course, not everyone needs to do this on their own. Like that's why there are shamans and healers that can look into your past lifetimes for you. Like it's not that everyone has to do it on their own, but yeah, basically a shaman and a healer, they help heal yourself. So what they do is they bring your past lifetime from the subconscious into the conscious so that you can heal and you can understand where certain things come from. But to summarize this all and to explain how we then can really liberate ourselves once for all, it's again coming back to the thing of doing the things that we are most afraid of. So I had this thing of being afraid of speaking up, and it was so extreme that literally when I started my channel like 3 years ago, for 2 months I was recording videos and I was deleting all of them because I just didn't feel comfortable or confident enough to speak up. And I kind of knew that I had to do it because I felt that this was my calling, and I also felt that I wanted to do it. So the only way how I could let go of that fear is by facing the fear head on and posting videos even if my voice was shaking in fear. And that's why the universe always creates circumstances in our life that almost, yeah, like we cannot even get around it. Like if we come into this life saying we heal this thing, then 99% of the times we will leave this earth plane healing the wound, because that's part of the whole creation. Like maybe even we can debate about it, because karma, that's a whole different story, and I feel it's a very complex thing. And I personally feel, that's my opinion, we can have another discussion about it. I personally feel that if it's in our soul's plan to heal certain things and to achieve certain things, they will be achieved no matter what. And so it doesn't matter how much our ego tries to interfere or how much we try to walk away from our purpose or from our path, we will always end up walking our path anyway, because it's crucial for the whole spiral of creation to unfold. And that's why the circumstances in our life are always such that, yes, we might need to face our fears and heal our wounds, but then once they're finally done, once it's finally done, once we're finally healed, then it's almost like, yeah, this liberation, but the liberation of not you, but all the people that came before you, all the ancestors that weren't able to speak up. And then in order to heal the earth, and we're all doing it in our own unique way, we're all here contributing to heal the earth, everyone gets a specific portion of healing that they need to do, of things that they need to create. And then everyone's portion is necessary for the whole orchestra to work out. It's almost like a clockwork, like one cogweb then moves all the others. And even if one is missing, then the whole machine doesn't work. And that's why I feel that it's my opinion that we cannot not follow our purpose. We cannot not fulfill our divine mission, because it's almost not possible, or that's what I feel, but again, we can talk about it. Because of how interconnected we are and how everything depends on all the other things. So even if we might think we are not following our soul's purpose, because maybe right now what we're doing is facing all the shadows and all the fears and all the repressed emotions, like we might think like, oh my God, this is my purpose and I should be already there, or like I should already have the career, I should already have all these things. But then healing this core wound is a crucial step of then getting to the other side of the situation, getting to the resolution of whatever has been going on. And so even if we are in pain, even if we are stagnant, and even if we face all these resistances, we are still following our soul's purpose, even if it doesn't feel that way, or even if we might think, I want to do something else. But nothing other, no other situation or no other thing in our life can heal this wound like the present moment. So the message is really about accepting the present as it is, and not thinking that the resolution of whatever is going on will come in the future. So it's not about saying, oh, when I will have reached a certain milestone, then I'll be happy. Or when I have created the project, then I'm worthy. Or there is a message of understanding that healing can only happen in the present moment. And it's not about like thinking that the other side or the next situation will give us relief. Because for example, if we really want to, for example, I don't know, be an actor, if it's our wish to be an actor, okay, but we might still have a core wound of fully showing ourselves or fully showing our character, then if we still have the wound, even if we have an amazing opportunity to be an actor in a really famous movie, if I then still have in myself this resistance, then it's not going to work anyway. Even if I get like a Hollywood whatever kind of opportunity which is super big, but I still have the resistance, then it's not gonna work anyway. And that's why the main message is that basically, yes, we are right where we are, and we are doing enough, and we are right on time, And it's actually, we're doing great. That's what I want to say. Like, whenever we feel stuck or stagnant, or whenever we think I should already have reached a certain goal, or I should already be there, like, no, it's exactly perfect as it is right now. Because what we're doing is, again, releasing the resistances, so that without resistance we can be a super successful actor. But then the super successful actor can only be a successful actor if they have cleared the resistance of fully showing up. And that's why it's so crucial to understand the importance of like healing. And obviously if we walk around with a bump in our heart, then there is always new poison coming in, or there is always like, that's also a thing, like when a trauma is created, when this bump is created, it basically almost puts like a cookie. So there are cookies when we browse websites, for example, they put a cookie to almost remember that we have been there and looked for these certain things. And a trauma is basically like a cookie. So it puts in this thing, this dot almost, that then needs to be released again. But before the dot is released again, it cannot fully flow as it's supposed to. And that's why, in order to allow the flow to flow, and in order to allow the flow to purge out this resistance, we basically have to almost revisit the moment where the cookie was placed. But then obviously if it's from a past lifetime, then we cannot revisit it like actually, but we have to, it's coming through meditation. So that's why some of you or some of us are having like out of nowhere this pain in the heart, like I don't even know where it's coming from. And I had so many of these things where all of the sudden everything was great, and all of the sudden it's almost like someone turned on like a microwave or something, and pain, and the heart is like pumping and vibrating. It's like, whoa, and I'm like, oh my god, where is this coming from? Like, whoa. And again, this is the revisiting of that emotion, this feeling of, and in my case, I really had it, like I once had a vision of being imprisoned. So I was actually revisiting that moment in time, parallel universe dimension, where I was imprisoned for speaking up and for being myself, basically. And that's why in this lifetime, it took me a while to fully be comfortable to show myself without being afraid. But then again, the only way how I could heal that is doing it even if I was afraid. And the more we do it, the easier it gets. I still have some days where I put on the camera and I have this thing like, oof, it's almost like, yeah, not a resistance, but a fear. But I'm like, why? Like, it's not even mine. And that's really the case. It's mostly not even our own, because it might be a specific cookie that you have chosen to release. So from the higher realms perspective, we have seen the earth with all these traumas, all these cookies, and everyone gets a few cookies to heal. Everyone gets a few trauma to release. Obviously we cannot do it all at once and all alone. Like, we have to be a lot of people and everyone has to do their part. But then when all these cookies, all these traumas are being released, then the flow is flowing perfectly as it's supposed to. And then, of course, it's also about understanding that healing goes in cycles. So that's why there are days where I'm like super confident and I'm like, of course, let's create a video, bam, bam, and it just flows. And other days where I still feel like this, not fear, but like this, again, this repression or this resistance. And this is why is that? It's because healing goes in spirals. So we basically revisit the same wound, but every time we go around the spiral, every time we revisit it, we're already in a more elevated space. Because it's not a spiral that goes like linearly, it's like a spiral that expands. And every time we like go around, like next time it's higher and the next time is a bit higher. So every time we revisit the wound, we're looking at it from a different perspective. And that's why, that's why triggers keep on coming up. That's why we might feel like it's a never-ending story, or we always need to heal and then it comes back. And so many people say, oh, I thought I'm already healed, or I thought I have already done enough inner work, but the wound still keeps on coming up. That's not a bad sign, because it's actually coming up once again, but from a perspective where you feel that you're healed, from a perspective where you feel that you are over it. And then when it comes up again, then you can really tell it, okay, I'm really over it. And then it can go away for good. And that's why it's also about honoring the pace of certain things and not rushing healing or not forcing ourselves to be someone who, yeah, it's a bit of a paradox, because in the end of the day, Spirit is telling us to do the things we are afraid of, doing exactly the things where we feel the most resistance, but then at the same time also honoring the pace of things and not forcing ourselves to be someone who we are not. Like it's, yeah, if we are super, super, super afraid of showing up or of being seen, then we won't go to apply for a movie, for example. Like we won't apply to be an actor. And that's why it's also about, yeah, honoring the divine timing. It's about honoring our own pace. And then it's actually about knowing that healing takes place automatically. And we don't really have to do so much. Because again, the river of like droplets of fire water, it flows all the time. The flow is flowing all the time. The spiral is spiraling all the time. And these pockets, they will eventually smoothen out with time. And all we can do is basically just being there and witnessing. But if we refuse to witness what's going on here, if we force ourselves to be someone here while not looking at the wound, it's just creating more and more repression. It's creating more and more repressed energies, stagnant energies. So that's why it's so important to, first of all, witnessing. That's why the only, like, we always hear, like, whenever we ask healers for advice, the thing is that healer always say, like, you will always, if you go to a spiritual healer, the thing that they will always tell you is listen to your heart. And they say, oh, they always say listen to your heart, blah, blah, blah. But that's it, really. It's the most powerful thing and the only thing, basically, that we can do in order to really heal core wounds. It's listening to our heart, tuning within, witnessing what's going on, and then allowing the flow to take over and allowing the healing to take place on its own. And then, of course, depending on how deep it goes, we might need to make a few rounds in order to smoothen it out again. But then again, it happens naturally. And whenever we feel like, for example, okay, so let's say we have done 10 years of healing and we are already over it and we feel like I'm super confident and let's go and I'm ready to show up on stage. So on that day, when we then show up on stage and still feel afraid, but then we need to be there because people are waiting and we still feel fear, in this moment there is also a trick that we can do, and it's about shifting the frequency, shifting the perspective, because we have seen that there are many layers, and the closest layers here, they are more the physical body, like they are more connected to the physical realm. And then the higher we go, they're already smooth. So basically, something that really, really helped me when I was afraid of speaking up in front of the camera was really to, okay, take a break, just take a walk and have a deep breather, and then shifting the frequency to a higher perspective, where I see myself not as the human body with this bump here, but I see myself as the higher self, as the soul, which is already healed and already, like, it's already flowing, basically. So whenever we need like a quick, whenever we have to like quieten down the doubts or quieten down a fear, it is really as simple as shifting a perspective, because literally when we then understand that, oh, actually we are already healed, we are already up here, then we don't need to be weighed down or like pushed down by this energy. And then of course this works like in day-to-day situations, but then on a long run we obviously want to bring the core wounds to the surface. But it's also, the message is also here that it's also about detaching ourselves a little bit from the wound, like not identifying ourselves with someone who is always a certain way. And because reinforcing that vision is then also always allowing the thing to stay the same. Like for example, if you say, I'm always unlucky in love, or it's so hard for me to make money, or I'm never gonna be able to move forward, or whatever is going on, like whenever we keep on feeding these thoughts, it keeps on feeding the bump. But then if we go a perspective higher and actually see, oh, I am already healed, and we are operating in this area here instead of this, then the flow just flows, and it's almost like this bump then goes up automatically, because we are no longer feeding into the wound, we are no longer putting poison into the wound, so that eventually the flow can take over and smoothen out the crease again. And it's really about raising our vibration. And the way we raise our vibration is by looking at certain things, but just from a higher perspective. Not being caught up in the pain, but really looking at the pain from an outside perspective. So we can look at it, we can look at what is going on, instead of being fully immersed in the pain and like really being down, deep down in the darkness. And that's basically the process. It's really about shifting frequencies, shifting perspectives, and in the end of the day, knowing that we are healed already. Because regardless of what's going on here, our soul is always up there. And we are the whole flow. We are the whole river. We are the whole spiral. So it doesn't matter if we see ourselves as, oh my God, I'm here with my trauma, this is what I am. But actually, no, we are the whole spiral. We are the whole universe. We are the whole soul. And by identifying ourselves with that higher perspective, then the bump will smoothen out automatically. And we don't even have to look into past lives if we don't need to. Like we don't have to open up that can of worms if it's not necessary. Because in the end of the day, it's literally just about feeling the emotion. And we don't really need to know what happened in a past lifetime in order to feel the emotion. It's there, we honor it, we acknowledge it, and we liberate it, instead of repressing it and pushing it down. And that's why it's so important to be vulnerable. It's so important to speak up and to really share how we are feeling, share about our process and what we are going through. Because then we can open the space and invite in the flow. And it's really about liberating these energies instead of being ashamed or afraid of, suppressing it down again, because that's not going to help. So it's really important also to have someone to talk to be open about what we are going through, and that in itself also brings in the flow, the healing. Because if we always keep things for ourselves, then of course the energy is always here revolving and never being able to be released. And that's why it's so important to be vulnerable, to be open, to share ourselves, to really, like we all go through trauma. That's the thing. Every single person on this planet is going through deep challenges, or there are many different layers. There are some who are having more karma to release and others less, and it's depending on, it's karma is a really complex story, but there are different degrees, but every single person is going through something. And why not be open about it, instead of faking everything and saying everything is great? Because that's basically how life, or like how society wants us to be, like hiding our imperfections, hiding our emotions, and like fitting into the mold, or like, it's like very unnatural. That's what I want to say. So we are wanting to find a natural way of expressing ourselves. Obviously, it needs to be in a safe space where we feel fully comfortable and comfortable to allow the emotions to flow. And then when we open up, then the wound can also open up, because if it's closed, if you don't allow anyone to look into what's going on here, then the energy might never be able to be released. And that's why it's so healing to talk about our process. That's why it's so healing to share our story and what we're going through, because again, that means that we are not only vulnerable, and it's not only that we are confident to show our emotions and our vulnerability, but it also gives us a sign, or it gives the universe a sign that we are fully ready to heal it now. Because we are no longer afraid of it, we're no longer hiding it, it's no longer in the subconscious, it's there, and we are liberating it. and allowing it to flow up. And that's about it. I think I've said everything, but I feel it's great. So this was the message for today. I feel there are so many more things that we can look into and say about spiritual healing, like it's really a whole art in itself. But I will keep it there for a moment. And if you have a question, please, please, please put it in the comments, and I will try to answer it in the next few videos. But I also really felt this call to like deeply look into the art of healing in a way, because there are so many ways how we can heal, but in the end of the day it always comes back to spiritual healing and energy healing, like understanding also trauma and where they are in the body, and not just the body but also the astral body, like understanding the whole spectrum. That's what I want to say. Because even if we might have then things in the physical body which can only be healed in a very physical way, like in a very conventional way, the root cause of why that happened is still spiritual. And that's why I say it doesn't matter what it is, it always comes back to spirit. It always comes back to our soul and our heart, because that's healing, that's health, that's being one with source, with healing, with health, with love, with unity. But yeah, that was the message for today. I really hope you resonated with the message. Please let me know if you did, and also let me know about any questions you might be having. And I'm also offering personal readings and healing sessions. So if you feel the call to connect and work together, we can definitely do that. You can find all my services on my website. And I really hope that you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for tuning in again, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye, much love.